Writing a book. Let's talk about that. I have started, okay, first of all, I would love to hear your stats down below. How many books have you started? How many books have you finished? And I'm talking about writing them. So, my stats as of currently, I have started 3 books. This is over the last few years, and I have finished 0 books as far as actually writing a book. Never done it before. But I'm in a situation right now where I've got a ridiculous amount of momentum going. I've got what feels like it I'm going to finish this. Like I'm almost certain. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, so we can't be certain. Anything's possible. I could be refining these ideas for some completely unrelated reason to finishing the book. Like that might not be the divine purpose and why all of this is unfolding like this. But I'm having an experience of getting to write a book with greater momentum than I've ever had before. And I want to talk about it just kind of in general. I don't even know for certain what all I want to put in here, but it's such a fun experience. It's such a fascinating experience. And let me just start by telling the very beginning of kind of when the floodgates opened and I actually started writing this book. Um, that moment was I was in my journal, I was writing in my journal, and I got this idea, this download that what if I wrote about this thing that I'm exploring in my journal? What if I wrote about this as an ebook, not a book? And there was something about what if this was an ebook that let me see it as like a 10-page thing. Like when I think this is a book, like I started a book about this time last year, honestly. I'd have to look back for sure. Maybe the fall of last year. And then the other book that I started was the fall of the year before. So there's something going on transit wise that this time of year I get really typey. I get really where I want to write. And so this time though, I had the idea of what if it's an ebook? Because in the past, when I think about a book, I'm shooting for 150 to 200 pages. And all of a sudden, the ebook idea, what was really behind that was I don't think I need to talk about this for 200 pages to get my point across. I think give me 10 pages and I can probably I can probably share the bulk majority of my ideas and enough to get you thinking. I don't need to write 200 pages to put these ideas out there. It could be an ebook, it could just be little and straight to the point and here you go and next. And maybe that would mean it's more likely for me to write it because think about what that did as far as expectation wise. Like when I sit down to write, last year and I'm targeting a book, it's a full book. I have the kind of structure of the outline I want to do. It might even be 4 books now that I think about it because I'm pretty sure that was the third one, not the second. Anyways, doesn't matter. I've never finished any of them. That's the real takeaway. It's nothing I've ever done in the past in attempting to write a book has ever led to a finished book. And so this is in that ballpark of how good are you at setting an intention and then living that intention? And normally I would say I'm pretty good at that, but when it comes to book writing, my track record is abysmal. It's 0% finished so far. But the reason I'm recording this video is because I think it's entirely possible that this one could be the game changer. This approach of what if it's an ebook? What if it's not a book? What if it's only 10 pages? What if it doesn't have to be 200 pages? What if my expectations that I was putting on myself in terms of expecting that I was going to write 200 pages and that I wasn't going to get to be done until it was a respectable size, quote unquote. Yeah, what if releasing that expectation of myself is what opened the floodgates? Because let me tell you what, the thing is 13 pages long as of yesterday. And I'm not done yet. And I think like at this point, I'm going to very easily hit 20, and maybe it'll even be 25-ish is kind of what I'm thinking. I'm also running into the situation where like I think I could just keep going and it would just keep getting bigger and bigger as I pulled in different ideas and this tangent and this related thing and this tool and like this thing is going to support you. I mean, I think if I don't have like a pretty tight boundary around what it is that I'm wanting to say in this first little chunk, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger because it relates to everything. So finding a stopping point is the only thing that's going to keep it even 25 or 30 pages. But I've never even written. I think the book that I started, the second one, um, it did get up to 20 pages, but it is so like it's not a coherent 20 pages. Like these 13 pages that I have right now, they're like mostly done sections. And there are some sections that I haven't started writing yet, but I at least know what I want to put there. And like this is mostly ready. Like there's very little left. There's another few pages left that'll like get it to a stopping point where the 20 pages I had before were like nothing. It was just like random stories with very little like drawing out of the story. Like, what do you want to be the takeaway? It's like I spent 5 pages writing about that experience, but like, what's the point? What do you even want people to remember about that? Like, what is the takeaway? And so I'm not saying I won't go back someday and like finish those other books, especially a couple of them. I'm guessing at some point they will be finished just because they fit into the overarching, like, what am I trying to communicate out into the world? But again, they're structured right now as 200-page monsters that, like, I just, I could not dance with that. I just was not tall enough. I wasn't tall enough to ride that ride. I didn't have the creative force. I didn't have the clarity. I didn't have the momentum to stick with it and continue to put one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. Like, you don't write 200 pages, you write one word. And I mean, even more than that, you write one letter and you string a couple letters together and that forms a word. You string a few words together. Now you got a sentence. Now you need a few sentences to have a paragraph. A few paragraphs, you got a page. Like, you don't write 200 pages. And even these 13 pages that I have now, like, you don't write 13 pages. You write a letter, you write a word, like that floodgate moment of what if this is an ebook? Like I can't even really convey the simplicity and the breakthrough that was, that idea, that manifestation of an idea of what if this is an ebook. I know how to self-publish. I can self-publish an ebook on Amazon and put a link to it in all my YouTube stuff and all my website stuff. Like, I can do that. What if it's an ebook? What if it's an ebook? What if it's only 10 pages long? What if, it's just 10 pages? That's all you have to write. And then you're done. Do you think you can do that? Because at that point, I wasted no time. I opened a Word document. I wrote my working title at the top of it. I wrote ebook notes by Carly Wharton, and I just started brain dumping. Like, here are the section headers that I have in mind. Here's a tiny paragraph about, like, kind of how do I even define this main word that we're going to use in this book. Like, there was just fragments that I like brain dumped, like, just get it out of my head and put it on the paper. And day one, I had like a few hundred words on a page. Like, it was a page, about a full page. And again, it was very loose notes of here's what I have in my mind. And then I don't even think it was the next day. I was talking to Dolly the next day and was telling her about this moment, this what if it's an ebook moment, and was telling her about like what the book is about and what was going on in my inner process that was leading me to want to write this book, and the title and what do I mean by that. And like, I was just kind of like talking it out with her. And in that talking it out, she had, her 2 cents. She had reactions to what I said, like good and bad. She had, pieces that felt important to her to share based on what I had shared, and that triggered more that I wanted to share inside of me. And so we talked it out like that. And the next morning in my morning time, as I was like journaling and getting my energy moving, one of the things that was just like, oh my gosh, I like reopened the thing and I took one of the section headers that was especially what she had picked out and like wanted to really like, that was the thing that just, stood out to her. And I took that section header and I started explaining, like, here's what I mean by that. And then I sent it to her and I'm like, hey, like, would love to hear your thoughts on this. And so then we talked about it again. And now at this point, I've sent it to her like 4 or 5 times. And every time she reads it and we talk about it again. And in the talking about it again, after those conversations, like yesterday, we talked for probably 2 hours about the book and the concept and, just all the pieces of it, and telling stories that exhibited different pieces and, just kind of like teasing it all apart just for the fun of this is really interesting stuff, or so we think. And after that conversation, I came back in to my office, and I'm going to say it was about 90 minutes that I spent, like an hour and a half, and I doubled the size from 6 pages to 12 based on that conversation and things that I wanted to explain and elaborate, and stories that came up in the conversation that I wanted to add into the book, and questions that I had asked her that I'm like, I might as well just put that question in the book and let everybody think through their own answer to it. Like, there was so much out of that 2 hour conversation that like got kicked up in that talking it out with her, that then to go sit back down at the ebook and like start writing again so effortlessly. Here's 6 more pages. I was like, whoa. So now it's sitting up at 12 and a half, 13 pages. And that is like, and like I said, it's like so complete in what it is. Like, so much of it, I mean, yes, of course, we could always go deeper. We could continue digging, and like, I will. And this first ebook is the first one. And I can see like this long chain of ebooks, these little 20-page chunks that, like, what if it's just an ebook? What if you don't have to write all 200 pages all at once? What if you don't have to clarify 200 pages worth of ideas and experiences and stories? What if it's only 20 pages worth? Is that more reachable? Is it more accessible? Because the point, I mean, what if the point is clarifying the ideas? What if the point is re-experiencing your old stories and like seeing them from the leading edge of who you are now? Digging into the behavior and the choices that you made in the past and the things that you would do differently now based on what you've learned. And what did you learn? And what were those turning points along the way? What if clarifying all of that is the point? What if the book and the book getting finished isn't even the point? What if other people reading it at some point isn't the point? You having the experience, what if that's the point? And if that's the point, and 200 pages is so outlandish that you can't even work on it, like, that's been my experience, is every book I've started for the last 3 years, I am aiming so high. I want it to be so much and so comprehensive and so everything that I'm like, yeah, it'll be, at least 200 pages, if not maybe even more than that, by the time I put in there all the things I want to put in there. And it's like, nobody's saying I can't write 37 ebooks. Nobody's saying I can't still write thousands and thousands and thousands of pages by the time my life is over, which is probably what it's going to be, whether those books get finished or not. The pages are starting to stack up. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, like, what if the point is just for you to clarify your experiences? And at that point, like, having the goal of writing an ebook, it's not like, this is my understanding, is that it's not about having an ebook at the end of that. It's about the healing journey of getting to sift and sort back through your own experience. And so, however long the book needs to be, or whatever topic you feel is the easiest to write about right here, right now, it's like whatever is the easiest point of entry into that experience of writing your story, what if that's the right answer? That there is no optimal length for the book, there is no perfect title, there is no perfect subject matter, even as long as you're able to continue to engage with it. What if that's all the juice that you're really after? And by having that juice of finding a way that you can continually engage with it, like I'm reminded here of a quote from Elizabeth Gilbert. She's who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. She wrote Big Magic and multiple other books, and short stories and magazine articles. And I mean, she's a writer by trade, so she's written lots of different kinds and formats of things. But a novel is her primary vehicle that she writes. And she says that the best books you've ever written were written in an hour a day. They weren't written like, I know I have had this vision, and as she tells it, she's like, lots of people have this picture in their mind of being able to like go to this cabin for 2 months and isolate themselves and write all day every day and like just really satiate themselves in the writing process and like dive into it and just live it and be it for these 2 months and come back with a novel, come back with a manuscript of some kind. And she's like, what you're probably going to find is a big, giant dose of writer's block when you actually get there, because now you're on a clock. You only have 2 months. The days are limited. You know, there's the perfectionism that can creep in on like, is this even good enough? Is this even worth it? Does this justify this time that I'm spending? And she's like, you know, rather than thinking that you're going to like leave your life and take this pause for 2 months and write this book, can you carve out 30 minutes a day? Can you carve out an hour a day to look at it? And even if you don't know what you're going to write when you open up the document, put the document in front of you and sit there and read it for an hour and see if, you know, every time I read it, like if I do go back and reread a section, I tweak it, I add another paragraph, I add this story, like, ooh, this is a good question for this exercise. Like I add to it. And now what was 3,800 words when I open the document, I close it and it's 4,200. That's not a lot. That's like a page maybe, but there's more to it than just like finishing the thing. There's the accessibility of, I have access to this space. I can open up this teeny little ebook manuscript and I can feel like I can work on it, and that is valuable. You know, like it's not, is the topic good enough? Is this book going to sell? Is this worth my time? Is anybody going to read it? Like it doesn't matter. Those things do not matter, except in the past they were all floating in my creative soup. As I was trying to write my books, I was also thinking about it from the outside perspective. And that really muddies the waters fast. Here's another piece of Elizabeth Gilbert advice that I really love that I am using on this one that I didn't have as I was working on my other ones, was don't write for your audience, write the book for one person. Like write the book to delight one person, write the book to speak to one person and know who that person is. Have them in your mind. And then as you're writing, you're not just, you know, picking random thoughts out of the air. You're basically having a conversation, an ongoing conversation with that person. You're targeting them specifically, individually, not my whole audience of thousands of people. Again, like how can you create the framework of what even are you doing as you're quote unquote writing your book? What is your process? What's your approach? These are the things that I'm like, wow, like I wouldn't have I wouldn't have thought that, like, you know, all of the last year I have been really interested in Elizabeth Gilbert just kind of as a person. Long story short, on our synastry charts, our nodes are opposite, are the same. So like we're both Virgo South node, and Pisces North Node. So, like, there's just a lot inside of her philosophy that I really appreciate. It's very grounded, it's very practical, and like, how are you actually going to put one foot in front of the other? But at the same time, like, so much of what she says is filled with giving yourself grace, having mercy for yourself, like, for your imperfections, for your humanity, the ways that you are simply human. And it's not about chopping off our humanity, it's about learning to accept it and embrace it and not vilify ourselves for it. And so that's where, like, the best books you've ever written were written in an hour a day. It goes back to the human attention span more than anything else. It's like the human attention span is very short, especially the faster and faster our culture gets, the shorter and shorter our attention span becomes. But that is not inherently a bad thing. That's been going on since humans came to Earth and have been evolving. Our attention span gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So, like, that all by itself isn't a bad thing, but learning how to work within what that sets up in your experience is the answer. It's not about like, oh, I'm bad because I can't pay attention to my book for 8 hours a day. A good writer would be able to write from 8 to 5 every single day and wouldn't take a day off just because they didn't feel a good writer, like, what even is that? Like, what even is that? Does that mean you can finish books? Does that mean people like them? Like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. What if, like, a human who writes is doing it in small chunks because that's how long we can pay attention. That's how long it's fun. Just like a kid. A kid doesn't color for 8 hours a day. Mostly a kid colors for an hour, maybe two. And then a kid wants to go ride bikes for a couple hours. And then a kid wants to come back in and read for a minute. And then a kid wants to, like, the kid bounces between this next fun thing and then this next fun thing and then this next fun thing. So, like, instead of taking the book and like writing the book so seriously, like it even is a job, what if it was just fun? What if this is the fun thing that I'm going to do for the next hour, maybe two if I'm really enjoying myself, but maybe 30 minutes if it's just not coming and it's mostly frustrating and it's just not, I hate everything I'm looking at. Like, it's obviously not the right time. This isn't fun right now. But like yesterday, after talking to Dolly for 2 hours, the only fun thing, I had to eventually, like, okay, I gotta go because I am like faunching at the bit to get to go and like open up the Word document and start writing some of this down. Like, I can't wait. I have to go do that. I have to go do that. The momentum is so strong that I have to go do that. And that, oh God, like, again, who cares? Who cares if the book ever gets written? Who cares if a single other person ever gets to read it? Isn't it just for the fun of getting to see yourself creating something that didn't exist before? Isn't it just for the fun of getting to use your own two hands and your own focus, your own attention, your own life force energy, and to make something that wasn't there before? To spend time translating energy into the physical? Because, like, that's what that was, me and Dolly for 2 hours translating our own individual energy into this co created conversation, into this physical thing, that the words that actually got spoken and heard, that moved energy this way and that way. We spent those 2 hours co-creating this momentum, and then I took that momentum and went and put 6 more pages into this little baby ebook. So fun. So fun. Such a fun way to spend 3 or 4 hours yesterday. So fun. And it's that fun that is the key that turns the lock on the door of the experience of writing this book. And again, that's very different than before, where I was taking it very seriously. Like people tell me, I get the feedback quite a bit through my YouTube stuff, like, you should write a book. Do you have a book? Where's your book? I'm like, I don't have a book. And in the back of my mind, I'm sitting there feeling like a failure because I've tried 3 times to write that book and it just won't come out. But the reason I was writing those books was very different than the reason I'm writing this book, which is just for the fun. So I would love to hear from you down below. How many books have you started? How many books have you finished? And what are what do you think is the key? Not to the door, period, of how to write a book, but to your door. If I'm assuming if you're listening to this, especially if you're still listening to this, there's some kind of loose possibly intention that you do want to write a book at some point in your life. So it's not that you're going to be able to take my recipe and apply that to your own life, but possibly the ideas that I've shared here and the way that I figured out what my key is in my lock to my door to my writing experience, possibly that wiggles loose some energy for you. And I would love to hear from you down below what anything you feel like sharing. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, you take such good care of yourself. Have so much fun in your day to day experience, and so will I.